let's see if I get this right, folks. Well-rounded, spherical, metallic marbles of less than a millimeter in size and weighing less than 1 milligram, found in the Pacific Ocean at the site of a crash of a basketball court-sized object from outside the solar system back in 2014, led scientists to claim that we have possibly found remnants of an alien ship or discovered alien technology. Avi Loeb, the lead scientist at the beginning of his search, along with his team in the Pacific Ocean, had remarked that we just embarked on a terrestrial ship in search of the possible relics of an extraterrestrial ship. It's a fun phrase to say. The tiny spheres are composed of a metallic substance unmatched to any existing alloys in our solar system. Scientists are even claiming the objects could be the first time that humanity has found solid evidence of interstellar objects, suggesting the possible existence of aliens. According to scientists, these spheres are perhaps the strongest contenders for being an alien artifact. Yes, I keep repeating myself, and yes, I will continue to do so. Because if this claim is proved, it could become a possible evidence. It's the proof. It's the concrete proof that we've been looking for. Even the US Space Command is believed to have confirmed the possibility of the particles being not from the solar system. So exciting. Next up, we have a word that's about to be fun for me to say over and over and over again. Oumuamua. I swear I tried looking up how to pronounce things for today, folks. I'm not perfect. That's what the internet told me. If I'm wrong, let me know in the comments. Please be nice. This cosmic visitor decided to make a spectacular entrance back in 2017. How? Well, this massive elongated object, resembling a cosmic cigar, hurtled past Earth at an extraordinary speed. We're talking like 196,000 miles per hour, leaving astronomers and enthusiasts alike in awe. NASA, ever the cosmic sentinel, proclaimed it a celestial emissary, a cosmic envoy from beyond our solar borders. Its trajectory, its otherworldly speed, set it apart as the first known interstellar object to venture into our cosmic neighborhood. However, the origins of this little wanderer remained shrouded in mystery, a puzzle that intrigued and perplexed the detectives of NASA. Going back to our expert that I consulted earlier, Avi Loeb, with the audacity to entertain the possibility of it being the extraterrestrial, postulated that it might not be just a little cosmic wanderer, but a relic of advanced alien technology. This little artifact cast adrift from a civilization beyond our cosmic horizon. His hypothesis injected a dose of extraterrestrial intrigue into the scientific discourse, igniting the imaginations of those like us who are like, aliens? Aliens? Please? Please? Granted, the overall jury of scientists remains divided, and other scientists who are like, I'm more of a skeptic, were like, okay, what about this? It might be a little like something dislodged from a planetary abode years and years and years ago that's just sort of went through gravity, went through space, and made it here. But hey, it's something that has caused a lot of people, a lot of experts, a lot of, I guess you could say, enthusiasts like myself, who are just like, this would be really cool. All of these theories colliding, they each offer a great glimpse into the possible origin story of this little, I don't know what. Since its discovery by 3 rockhounds in the mountains of eastern California, this little 2x3-inch stone-like mass has been at the heart of speculation around the world. It's known as the Koso artifact, and honestly, it wouldn't look out of place in my hometown for folks who play around former mine sites. By the way, it was named after the California mountain range where it was found. And also, it's not mining debris. Also, nobody's really sure what it is. Was it a rock embedded 500,000 years ago with an electronic device left on Earth by alien visitors? Or was it the remnant of a long-gone advanced civilization? Why all the speculation? Well, when the rock-like object was sliced in half shortly after its discovery, a perfectly circular, porcelain-like section was found inside of it. In the center of that section was a tiny pin that corresponded to a magnet. An X-ray clearly showed the metal pin, with a spring or helix at one end, and the other half of the object showed metal covering the porcelain-like cylinder. So, how could this technology end up inside such an ancient mass? People have called it the world's oldest spark plug, while skeptics have dismissed it as a geological anomaly. But it's a complete mystery. There's no doubt there. The saga started innocently enough on February 13th of 1961 when a couple of friends went to a peak to look for interesting mineral specimens because they owned a gem and gift shop, and they're like, okay, what can we hawk? They're like, this could be a geode, which, if you don't know what geode is, it's a rock with a cavity that's lined with really colorful, really pretty minerals. Tourists love them. I have one that I got during a field trip to Science North way back in the day. They're beautiful. So, Virginia Maxey, one of the shop owners, wrote a letter to the editor of Desert Magazine being like, I don't know. It's not just a pretty little geode. In the opinion of one trained geologist, it has taken at least 500,000 years for this nodule to attain its present form, but when we cut it open, this is a man-made object. Now, she never identified the geologist that they got this quote from, but it was enough for all the stories and all the discourse to begin. And we're talking like from back then till present day. Chad Wyndham of Pendleton, Oregon, former president of the Spark Plug Collectors of America, still remembers looking at the X-ray. Yep, there's a club for everything, everybody. Even though it was poor quality, according to him, it was 100% no doubt in his mind that it was a champion plug, because at the time they made more spark plugs than everybody else combined. Okay. There were mining operations near where the artifact was found, and a lot of people were like, hey, it could come from there. So what happened after the discovery? Not much. The artifact collected dust for a lot of years in a closet of the son of one of the rockhounds who found it, becoming a family heirloom, a party piece. Okay, my vote, because right now we're going a little too sciencey, alien hardware that wound up in a concretion situation. So typically you see concretions when stopping by a seashore, in a riverbed, in the desert, poking around mountains, all these little spherical rock-like objects. One way they form is as a sediment builds up in successive layers on something like a shell or a pebble, or random alien tech hanging out just long enough. Think about it, okay? An old mine would be a perfect hideout for UFOs, and an easy way to explain the unexplainable. Or the aliens could have visited before the mine became a mine, and the tech inspired spark plugs. The possibilities are endless, folks, if you just open up your minds to aliens. The 12,500-year-old Shagir idol has been compared to alien heads by a number of people who are, pro-paranormal, and if that phrase isn't music to your ears, you must be new around here, so welcome! It is the oldest known wooden sculpture, and it was carved during the Mesolithic period, shortly after the end of the last ice age, and is twice as old as Egypt's Great Pyramid. It was discovered on January 24th of 1890 at a depth of about 4 meters in the peat bog of Shagir, on the eastern slope of the Middle Urals, near the village of Kalata, and approximately 100 kilometers from Yekaterinburg. If I got any of those wrong, I'm sorry. Investigations in this area had begun 40 years earlier, after the discovery of a variety of prehistoric objects in an open cast gold mine. Wow, my mine cover-up story is working really well, ain't it? So the statue was extracted in 10 parts. Professor D.I. Lobanov combined the main fragments to rebuild a sculpture that was about 2.8 meters high. Fast forward to 1914, an archaeologist proposed a variant of his reconstruction by integrating the unused fragments. Well, and now this little thing went from 2.8 to 5.3 meters high. Radio host Brady D'Angelo, or Brady in the Morning, posted to Facebook saying, looks like an alien's head to me. So many alien-looking drawings and artifacts in our distant past, it's crazy. I'm not saying our ancestors might have been aliens and they took their DNA and fused it with a monkey's DNA to create humans. I'm not saying that at all. Not all. Not yet. The perfectly preserved wooden sculpture is believed to be proof of the vast changes in climate since it was made. Typically, wood tends to break down in most environments and doesn't really last to be discovered by archaeologists. Well, compared to stuff like stone and metal. So this weird statue and its carvings might be proof of alien artifacts just landed here, blended in with the environments, and just hanging out, waiting to be discovered. Alright, let's see if I can end today without bungling another word. The Sanxingdui site discoveries. The 3,000-year-old treasures are believed to have reignited debates on the existence of aliens, which, yes, please. Despite scientists saying the artifacts could change all we know about human history, I don't know, looking at this mask, it's an alien. Look, it's got these wide-set eyes, a deep nose, which is similar to earlier discoveries of bronze human statues, and, well, it looks kind of alien. Evidence of an ancient culture was first found in 1927 when a well-to-do farmer unearthed a large stash of jade relics while dredging an irrigation ditch, many of which throughout the years found their ways into the hands of private collectors. Which means they're valuable. Fast forward to 1931, the discovery was brought to the attention of an Anglican missionary who recognized the importance of the discovery and contacted a local magistrate, as well as Daniel Sheets Dye, a professor of geology at West China Union University. The three of them then visited the location and photographed and measured the site, as you do. Then we get to 1934, when David Crockett Graham, the new director of the museum, organized the first archaeological excavation. Okay, let's get forward to 1986, when local workers accidentally found sacrificial pits containing thousands of gold, bronze, jade, and pottery artifacts that had been broken, perhaps ritually disfigured, burned, and carefully buried. Containing approximately 800 objects, the second sacrificial pit was found a little less than a month later, only about 20 to 30 meters from the first one. Bronze objects found in the second sacrificial pit included sculptures of humans, animal face sculptures, bells, decorative animals such as dragons, snakes, chicks, birds, and axes. Tables, masks, and belts were some of the objects found that were made out of gold, while objects made out of jade included axes, other weapons, tablets, rings, and tubes. There was also a large number of ivory and clamshells. Researchers were astonished to find an artistic style that was completely unknown in the history of Chinese art. So here's the alien stuff. In March of 2021, more than 500 cultural relics, including a 3,000-year-old gold mask, were discovered at a 4.6 square mile area outside of the provincial capital of Sanxingdui. The mask is estimated to be made from 84% gold and weighs 280 grams. According to the National Culture Heritage Administration, the items were recovered from 6 newly discovered sacrificial pits. And they found a bunch of other stuff, by the way. These 6 pits were discovered at the site between 2020 and 2022 during a renewed slate of excavations. And what do you know? Scientists don't have answers for how they came to be. So, once again folks, alien artifacts. They fell out of the sky, they match what we have here on Earth. We've always been trying to replicate what we knew that came from out of there. Seriously, look at the pictures. In 5th place, we have a mysterious radio signal. So in February of 2003, astronomers with the Search for Extraterrestrial Intelligence Project, SETI for short, used a massive telescope in Puerto Rico to re-examine the 200 sections of the sky which had all previously yielded unexplained radio signals. So these signals had all disappeared, except for one which had become stronger. The signal, widely thought to be the best candidate yet for an alien contact, comes from a spot between the constellations of Pisces and Aries, where there are no obvious stars or planets, named SHGB02+14A. The signal has a frequency of about 1,420 megahertz. So this happens to be one of the main frequencies at which hydrogen, the most common element in the universe, readily absorbs and emits energy. Some astronomers have argued that extraterrestrials trying to advertise their presence would be likely to transmit at this frequency, and SETI researchers conventionally scan this part of the radio spectrum. So the telescope has only observed the signal for about a minute in total, which is not long enough for astronomers to analyze it thoroughly. I can already hear y'all now in the comments, but Alexa, how is this scary? So this contributes to the theory that I very much support, that aliens are kind of treating us like animals in a zoo, constantly monitoring and interfering only when need be. Personally, I know I already feel like I'm under a magnifying glass on a regular basis. I don't need sky aliens watching me. Thanks! In 4th place, we have the Viking Mars lander. So taking it all the way back to 1976, when tests performed on Martian soil samples by NASA's Viking landers hinted at chemical evidence of life. 2 Viking landers became the first US spacecrafts from Earth to touch down on Mars. They took the first high-resolution images of the planet, surveyed the planet's geographical features, and analyzed the geological composition of the atmosphere and surface. Perhaps most interestingly, they also performed experiments that searched for signs of microbial life in Martian soil. Overall, these life detection experiments produced surprising and contradictory results. So one experiment, the labeled release or LR experiment, showed that the Martian soil tested positive for metabolism, which is a sign that on Earth would almost certainly suggest the presence of life. However, a related experiment found no trace of organic material, suggesting the absence of life. The LR experiment that reported the positive result mixed soil with radioactive carbon-labeled nutrients and then tested for the production of radioactive methane gas. The production of radioactive methane suggested that something in the soil was metabolizing the nutrients and producing radioactive gas. But since other experiments on board failed to find any evidence of life, NASA declared the result a false positive. So at this point, I would hope that anyone watching this knows that that negative statement, in a sense, only strengthens our arguments. In the 40 years since these experiments, scientists have been able to reconcile the conflicting results, and a small minority of scientists argue that the Viking results were positive for life on Mars. One prominent proponent of this view is Gilbert Levin, experimenter of the Viking LR experiment. At first, Gilbert thought that the LR results were unclear, and stated merely that the results were consistent with biology. However, in 1997, after many years of further experiments on Earth, along with new discoveries on Mars, which NASA has now declared habitable by the way, and the discovery of microorganisms living under conditions on Earth as severe as those on Mars, he and his Viking co-experimenter, Dr. Patricia A. Stratt, have argued that the Mars results are best explained by living organisms. Sadly, all future experiments will have an unavoidable drawback: the potential for contamination by previous landers. In this regard, the Viking landers were unique in that they were the only pristine Martian life detection experiment that we will ever have. In 3rd place, we have Roswell. Look, whether you like it or not, Roswell is easily the most popular and controversial alien and UFO spotting to this day, and there is so much lore around it to not mention it constantly. Former CIA agent Oscar Wayne Wolf claims he saw both living aliens, retrieved parts, and remains of alien ships throughout his career. The agent made these shocking claims about the infamous Area 51, claiming he caught a glimpse of an extraterrestrial spacecraft and a living alien. The 77-year-old man was speaking to UFO researcher Richard Dolan, but concerned about giving up his true identity at the time, went by the anonymous. So after the agent made his claim, it was then shared at the Citizens Hearing on Disclosure held at the National Press Club in Washington in 2013. The agent is understood to have used a fake name throughout his career in the CIA, so the chances of his real name having been used in the account were never high. He worked for the CIA between 1957 and 1960, where he spent time in a military base in the southeast US where they analyzed physical evidence. In 2013, fearing he might soon pass away, the anonymous came forward for one more conversation, this time with, Richard Dolan. He claimed that he was taken into Area 51 to look at items allegedly found and retrieved by the US government. He also claimed among them was a flying saucer that crashed and landed in July of 1947 in Roswell, New Mexico. He stated that there were live aliens there and that he was taken to the S4 facility in Area 51. In his statement, he described seeing different saucer crafts in the facility, with the first place he visited holding the Roswell craft, and it was kind of crashed up, but apparently every alien that was in it died except for a few. The Roswell craft was also really strange because it looked like really heavy aluminum foil. At S4, he viewed the autopsy film, where the colonel on screen said, "What we've got in here is we're interviewing a gray alien." So the anonymous had no idea he was going to see the film, saying the alien didn't look human as far as the skin tone and basically the shape of it and the size of its head, compared with a normal human. Following the interview that he gave publicly, he was warned by the CIA not to conduct any further interviews or disclosures. Well then, if you never see me again, that'll explain it. In second place, we have a 2017 report in the New York Times. Yep, a 2017 report in the New York Times on bizarre sightings kept secret by the US military is the reason the US government now produces an annual report on UAP sightings, and Congress created a system for government whistleblowers to report sightings. More recently, two of the journalists who wrote that report have taken one giant leap forward and reported extraordinary new allegations. In June of 2023, they described jaw-dropping new claims from a decorated former combat officer who served as the US Department of Defense's representative to a UAP task force from 2019 to 2021. David Grush was quoted in their print report and in a later televised interview saying the United States has in its possession an aircraft of non-human origin, and not just one aircraft, he says, but many. He says the discoveries are numerous, involving everything from wreckage up to intact vehicles, and he says these items have been collected for decades by the US government, by allies, and by defense contractors. He says this information is being illegally withheld from members of Congress, and he's alerted them, as well as the Inspector General for the American intelligence community. So authors who reported on his allegations for the science site The Debrief quoted other US officials vouching for David's credibility, including Jonathan Gray, an officer in the intelligence community with a top secret clearance, who stated as follows: "The non-human intelligence phenomenon is real. We are not alone. Retrievals of this kind are not limited to the United States. This is a global phenomenon, and yet a global solution continues to elude us." Once again, if scientists and professionals weren't scared, this wouldn't all be kept secret. Just saying. Not like I consider myself an expert on this subject at this point or anything. And in our first place, we have the disappearance of experts. So back in 1968, a group of Soviet engineers who were working in the isolated region of Cao Bang, North Vietnam, in hopes of building a hydroelectric power plant, suddenly heard a rumble of engines overhead. And thinking that it was an American B-52 plane, they all ran out of their tents, but were surprised to instead see a black angular diamond-shaped object approximately twice the size of the moon, and which emitted a greenish-blue light. Moments later, a fiery comet-shaped object emerging somewhere on Earth struck the diamond-shaped object, creating a bright flash that blinded everyone, and then a powerful shockwave knocked the Russian hydrologists down and tore their tents apart, sweeping away all their equipment. Fortunately, no one was seriously hurt, but the explosion produced deep concern amongst those present. The original consensus was that a small nuclear device had exploded, since for several hours neither the radio or other communications equipment worked, producing only severe static. It wasn't until the next morning that it was possible for the group to contact their central base and report the incident. The scientists promised a full report of events and visited the closest village where, strangely, there was no sign of destruction or explosion, and the inhabitants only thought that they heard a very loud thunderstorm. So after about 2 days and about a kilometer away from their base camp, the scientists found a black half-spear-shaped object about 3 meters in diameter. So the surface of the sphere was completely black, and it seemed that light did not reflect from its surface. Also, the sphere did not cast a shadow, with the rays of the low evening sun seeming to go around the strange object, falling on the high grass around it. By touch, the sphere seemed kind of cool and a little bit slippery, as if doused with soapy water. One of the men attempted to scratch the surface of the sphere with a sharp knife and was unable to leave a mark. They then notified their central base about their finding and received instructions from their main base to set up a protective perimeter around the object and guard it until a special group arrived at the site. They were strictly warned to stay 20 meters away from the sphere, so the entire group of 5 men camped exactly 20 meters from the sphere. I would have probably stayed a little farther for safety's sake, but Alrighty, they had no idea what the sphere could be, and guessed it was some kind of new weaponry of either Soviet or American origin. One of the specialists, Boris Ivanov, wrote in his journal that the men spent the evening staring uneasily at the object, in the light of their bonfire, with their carbines ready, just in case of any problems, waiting for the Special Forces group to show up and take control of the situation. At one point in the evening, one of the men, named Vyacheslav, rose and went into the brushwood for a prosaic outing, while the rest of the men remained at camp. When he didn't return after a too long period of time, the men began to nervously call out his name, but he did not respond. Even after searching the area with flashlights in the direction of the sphere, the men could not find Vyacheslav. Concerned and afraid, the rest of the men decided to not look any further and return to the bonfire. After about an hour, another man, Peter K., silently rose and also went into the brushwood, exactly in the same direction that Vyacheslav had taken. He seemed to move uncomfortably, rocking back and forth, apparently very drowsy. Yep, you guessed it, Peter K. also never returned. This time the remaining men did not search for Peter, but simply sat and waited. After 2 more hours, Vladimir M. felt called to the sphere. And yep, he also never came back. At this point, only 2 men remained, Boris and Sergei. Suddenly, Sergei's face became distorted. He rose like a marionette and meandered away into the dark, in the direction of the strange sphere. Moments later, Boris found himself tempted to move, and terrified, he grabbed his carbine and shot himself in the leg in an attempt to disable himself so he wouldn't walk away to an uncertain fate. As a result of the pain, he passed out, only waking up in the morning when the specialists arrived. They found him, half conscious by the now extinguished bonfire, having lost a lot of red bodily fluid, but still alive. And by this time, the sphere had disappeared, along with his comrades. Add that to another reason why I'm going to continue to avoid camping as a pastime. Number 5, an ancient fortress. Outside the old Inca capital of Cusco, a fortress called Sacsayhuaman is hanging out in the Peruvian Andes. Built from enormous stones that have been chiseled and stacked together like a jigsaw puzzle, some say this fortress could be the work of an ancient civilization that had help from interstellar friends. The 1,000-year-old interlocking fortress walls are made of rocks that weigh as much as 360 tons each, and which were carried more than 20 miles before being lifted and fit into place with laser-like precision. How an ancient culture accomplished such a feat of engineering is a fun little problem to solve. Turns out the Inca were as adept at building houses and fortified complexes as they were as watching the sky and keeping calendars. As a matter of fact, this fortress isn't the only example of this intricate masonry. Similar walls exist throughout the Inca Empire, including one in Cusco where a 12-angled stone has been carefully wedged into place. Something I'll bring up a lot today is that the marvels of ancient architecture just can't be explained by what we know about history. Sure, by modern standards some of it can be explained, but our technology had to evolve to that point first. The only way it can make sense in history is if we got help from a more advanced species. Number 4, graffiti inside the Great Pyramids. In the heart of the city of El Giza stands the Giza Pyramid Complex, also known as the Necropolis. This architectural marvel contains 3 pyramids: the Pyramid of Khafre, the Pyramid of Menkaure, and of course the Great Pyramid of Giza. Although each was created for a different pharaoh, many historians are convinced that their collective design is cohesive and intentional, as the arrangement of these structures is possibly a representation of the Orion constellation. The complex's crown jewel, though, is the Great Pyramid. Most believe it was erected under the watchful eye of the pharaoh Khufu to be a tomb where the king would complete his transformation into a god in the afterlife. Standing around 146.7 meters high and stretching 234.4 meters wide, it looms above everything around it. It was assembled from 2.5 million stone blocks, some of which came from over 500 miles away, which is particularly amazing when you consider that they didn't have the use of wheels at the time, and that construction only took 20 years. If that sounds like a lot to anyone, try living in Toronto, where construction takes that long to renovate like a single street. And by the time it's done being renovated, workers take so long they have to do it again. Whoever designed and built the pyramids had incredibly detailed knowledge and architectural skill. When completed, the pyramid towered over the city, and its corners aligned almost exactly with the points of a compass. In general, Egyptians often oriented structures to true north pretty precisely, likely using stars such as Polaris to orient their work, and the Great Pyramid is no exception. The origins and composition of the Great Pyramid, our oldest wonder of the world and its slightly less famous kin, have long confounded scholars. So how did engineers manage to achieve these seemingly impossible feats that building these masterpieces would require? Well, the truth is, nobody knows for sure. While some believe that construction workers may have used large ramps to transport the stones, this theory has been largely disproven, as there is little archaeological evidence to support the claim. Naturally, theories arguing that aliens must have constructed the pyramid have come into play. It's true that it would have been difficult for humans to build the pyramids, and there's precious little historical evidence of how they were built. Citing this, as well as the architectural and scientific questions that surround the pyramids, many people, myself included, have proposed that aliens came to Earth in ancient times and helped kickstart civilizations. According to these theories, the aliens were instrumental in helping ancient Egyptians build their masterpieces. Believers like us argue that in order to design the pyramids as they are, one would need a bird's eye view, the kind that can be provided from, say, a flying saucer. They also believe that in order to create an object that obeys the so-called golden ratio, a mathematical relationship based on the special number phi, the Egyptians would have needed help from outside sources. Hey look, the alien theory has persisted to the present day. In 2001, Russian scientist Dr. Viktor Ivanovich claimed that the KGB had found ancient alien remains inside of the Great Pyramid. Certainly the Great Pyramid's inner network of shafts, passageways, and chambers is so intricate that it's not hard to understand why people believed that some kind of divinity or superintelligence was involved. Also, the only hieroglyphs inside are graffiti, alleged to be left behind by those who worked on the structure as a signature, which only further supports my theory on the aliens only knowing that to communicate with us by. Like time capsules, the pyramids are physical symbols of ancient wisdom. Made of glittering gold limestone and always remaining around a cool 20 degrees centigrade inside, they provide glimpses of an ancient society that once neared the kind of technological intelligence we possess today. Hey, maybe in 2,000 years, historians will speculate about the extraterrestrial origins of our fallen civilization, and by then, they'll be able to consult actual aliens for help. Number 3. Helicopter hieroglyphs. Depictions of modern craft found in ancient Egyptian hieroglyphs have been hailed as proof of time travel, and even an advanced alien civilization visiting our ancestors. For folks like us, hieroglyphs appearing to resemble planes and helicopters in artwork done thousands of years ago have been hailed as unequivocal proof that the ancient Egyptians were visited by beings who brought them advanced technology from the future, with many supporters of the theory saying if the ancient civilization was putting helicopters and modern spacecraft in their artwork, then they must have seen them or at least observed images of them, which makes sense to me. The helicopter hieroglyphs is a name given to part of an Egyptian hieroglyph carving from the temple of Seti I at Abydos. They've been interpreted as an out-of-place artifact depicting a helicopter as well as other examples of modern technology. The initial carving was made during the reign, like I said, of Seti I and translates to "He who repulses the 9 enemies of Egypt." It was later filled in with plaster and recarved during the reign of Ramesses II with the title "He who protects Egypt and overthrows the foreign countries." Over time, the plaster has eroded away, leaving both inscriptions partially visible and creating a palimpsest-like effect of overlapping hieroglyphs. As with all dates in ancient Egypt, the actual date of Seti's reign are unclear, and various historians propose different dates, with 1294 BC to 1279 BC and 1290 BC to 1279 BC being the most commonly used by scholars today. Back to the hieroglyphs. So the 3,000-year-old hieroglyphs found in the temple are said to depict a helicopter, plane, and futuristic aircraft among the usual, insects, symbols, and snakes. One popular theory, known as the ancient aliens theory, is that the advanced race who brought details of futuristic technology to the Egyptians are visitors from a far-flung, highly advanced planet, visiting to share their knowledge with the primitive communities here on Earth. The beliefs claim that these extraterrestrials were the ones behind the development of the pyramids, Stonehenge, and other famous monuments. And this wasn't the first, nor the last time I will be talking about that today. Steve Mera is a UFOologist who tours the country giving talks on the research he conducts. And at UFO conferences, he produces the helicopter hieroglyphs as part of the debate. During one specific talk in Warminster, Wiltshire, he pointed out the helicopter, describing how it has what looks like a rotor blade and a rudder, also possibly a wing. Look, they had to have the visual from somewhere. Just saying. Number 2. Stonehenge. So the mystery of Stonehenge has baffled historians for centuries. One of the never-ending questions about the ancient site is whether or not it contains hieroglyphics. And in 2015, a scientific paper was published by a mathematician, Dr. A.E. Zlobin, in the form of a diary. He discovered ancient Egyptian hieroglyphs in Stonehenge and determined the site as the solar Egyptian temple of the god Atum. However, there are several other theories that suggest that the site may have used to record messages or stories. One theory suggests the stones themselves may have been carved with hieroglyphics, and that theory is based on the fact that many other sites, such as the pyramids of Egypt, were also decorated with such writing. Another theory suggests that the stones may have been used as a giant sundial, with the hieroglyphics acting as a way to record the movements of the sun. So this theory is supported by the fact that Stonehenge is aligned with the movements of the sun and moon. Whatever the true purpose of it is, it's clear that the site was of great importance to the ancient people who built it. Speaking of which, who built that thing, and why did they build it? Nabta Playa, as it is now known, is not easily accessible. It is thought that the stones are among the oldest astronomical alignments of megaliths in the world, and were built by a nomadic society in the early centuries of Stonehenge, and it's possible that they were built by an ancient civilization. Also, the tomb nearby was also only filled with only cattle bones, which is really unusual. My theory, and ergo why it made today's list is that the anomalies point more towards alien advanced communication instead of isolated humans. Also, there haven't really been signs of human life, only cattle like I mentioned before, which supports my theory, and not to sound like a broken record today, but if there's something I can't leave out, where there are hieroglyphs, there are things we as humans can't explain. It furthers my theory that one of the languages aliens can communicate with, and the reason they don't visit more now compared to in history, is because of how much we no longer communicate with them now that it's not a regularly used language. Stonehenge is thought to have been formed between the ancient Neolithic and Bronze Ages, while the pyramids are thought to have formed during the Iron Age. For those who need more precision, Stonehenge is thought to be around 3,100 years old, while the pyramids are thought to be around 4,500 years old. Just for reference. Number 1, an alien mummy. Another sign that excites supporters of the claim that ancient Egypt was visited by aliens is a mummy discovered in a small pyramid near Senusret II's pyramid. Now, the structure of its skeleton doesn't really resemble that of a human's body. It's a skeletal conundrum made up of perplexing features. So it's only 6 inches tall, but initial estimates of the age of the bones were consistent with someone in the single digits of age. But the face is what looks especially different. The long angular skull with slanted eye sockets and fewer than normal ribs, 10 pairs rather than the normal 12, only really deepen the mystery. The mummy was discovered by Dr. Victor Luback, a retired professor from the University of Pennsylvania. The remains were found surrounded by unusual objects that could not be identified. An anonymous source claimed that the mummy does not originate from Earth, and that it has greatly troubled Egyptian authorities, who want to keep it a secret. According to the source, in life the mummy served as an advisor to the pharaoh Osirunet. Governments refuse to admit the implications that such a discovery has for human history, but they still fail to provide the world with a significant explanation for it. When I tried to learn more about this mummy, most of the links and resources had randomly gone missing and weren't archived anywhere, which tends to be par for the course when the government wants to cover up the truth about anything to do with aliens. I swear one of these days I'm just gonna go missing, and the government will be to blame.